I want to talk about the signs that start coming up when you feel like you're outgrowing your life. You've spent time and energy over the years putting this life together, and yet it's this constant evolving thing that needs to be shifted and pruned, and sometimes drastic changes needed. What worked for one chapter of life isn't working anymore. Now, I felt that a few years ago going back, and after raising the kids and balancing an art business that I love, still love doing arts, I was feeling like there's something else out there that I'm supposed to be doing. It was this it was this deeper, when I would just be quiet, I would feel this knowing that this was the time. And so for a while I listened to that, trying to figure out what that was. And we decided to plan a 3-month international trip. I'm like, I know that part of what I'm supposed to be doing has to do with other cultures and learning about people and exploring and just bringing people together. And I wasn't sure exactly what that looked like. I was doing that in some level already with my art, using that as a tool to just communicate hope and grief and things like that. But a compromise was I wanted to go travel for a year, and the rest of my family was like, that's too long. And so at that point, we decided 3 months is what we could afford and what we could realistically have my husband get off work and still have a job when he came back and things like that. So we did that, had an amazing time. It very much validated for me that I love it. The feeling I get when I'm sitting in a cafe, listening to another language and just watching people interact in these other cultures, I learned so much. And I love not taking my Americanness as much as I possibly can into these other cultures and just learning and growing and witnessing from them. And then, like America is this melting pot, you take pieces of each of what works for you and you learn from that and you adapt it. So that calling or that knowing started growing. And there was a few tearful, conversations with my husband where I'm just like, I just want us to do this so bad. I feel so deeply that we could make this work. And he is just much more of the, I'm right there with you if we can financially make this work, if we can have a plan. He's like, why can't we wait till retirement and then we can go, or maybe I can get a month off every January and we can do that. And the rational compromising part of my brain was like, you know what, you're totally right. That seems fair. Let's try that. And now we live up outside the Twin Cities and it's cold. It's very cold here during the winter. I'm sick of winter. I spend most of January and February daydreaming about being in other places. I love it through the holidays and then I'm over it. It's something that I thought maybe I can mentally get through and I've managed to survive through it, but it's not for me. And what happened though is over the last couple of years is I've watched him kind of come to that same realization, but he had to come to it on his own schedule. I wasn't going to win if I coerced him or forced him into that situation. That would kind of be like a nightmare being with someone. Now you're traveling, they're upset and they don't want to be there. And that's not at all what I pictured in my head. And we get along so well. And he's my favorite person. So I can honor that in him when he was not feeling that. I just had to figure out okay, how do we find a middle ground for this? And so my next solution was, okay, I'm going back to college. I'm going to go back to college and work on building up all of my skills again so I can make remote income. And so I have been in college now the last couple years, and it's been amazing. And it hasn't just built up those skills, it's kind of launched this part of me again that has lived in the woods and been home with the kids and, through the pandemic and all of these things, like isolated. So now all of a sudden I'm being around this fantastic, group of students and teachers that have all been so supportive. I am learning so many new skills and just different, like my art history class, learning about all of these pieces of art throughout the world that I'm adding to my list now of places I want to see someday. It's been so inspiring to get to explore that, and such a luxury, like gift. I do not take it for granted that I've been able to do this. It has been a big sacrifice. I don't want to act like it's just no big deal. I've put the work in. Now it's been a few years. I happen to have some credits I was able to transfer over. So now I just have one more semester left. And so then this started to look a little bit more realistic. And so this summer then we had another talk, and that same voice keeps coming up. But I've tried to step back and I decided what I was going to do, take this as you will, is I'm going to live as if that will happen. It's not up for debate. It will happen that we are going to travel full time. It's just a matter of when. So I started preparing our life for that possibility. I started decluttering. I started selling things for extra money, and decluttering served two purposes there. We cleaned up our budget even more so we could put money away. I started to make a plan of how much money would it take for us to create a buffer and like an emergency fund, and how much would I need to make for us to travel, with the intent that maybe there's a chance I can get him out of his job. And what would the expenses be if... Now, one of the things is if you're not in America, you can get health insurance for way cheaper, for, a few $100s for a family versus much more. But the key is you can't be in America. So it's kind of at some point, if he leaves his job, unless I'm working full time for a company, we're faced with that same dilemma. So it's a big swing of deciding to be here part-time or just leaving altogether and just coming back to visit. And so that was one of the final things. And when we're really looking at the numbers, like, boy, we could live so much cheaper in some of these other countries and really have money to explore and still be less of a budget than we need here now. So my point with all of that is simply, it was this gnawing feeling that wouldn't go away. But instead of just sitting and literally crying about it, it was like, okay, then let's come up with an action plan. How can I make our current reality so connected with that dream reality that eventually start to fuse together? And so that could be on so many different ways. It doesn't have to be about travel, even though that's what this example is. That could also be about being able to stay home with your kids. There's dreams about starting a business. How can you get the tools you need, the financial part that you need, the energy that you need, and have all of that be in a timeline that works for you? So if you can start breaking down those different areas and slowly lessening the gap, pretty soon you're vibrationally at that same level as that dream life that you have in mind. And it's not such a far-fetched thing. I think the worst thing you can do is to just keep living your life and say, well, when it's supposed to happen, it'll happen. Or once I have the money, then we'll do it. Because at least for us, I mean, that probably can happen. But for us, we've had to be very intentional. We've had to sacrifice a lot, and we've had to be willing to literally get rid of things that matter so much in order to get closer to that dream. So it wasn't just an afternoon whim of a dream. At one point it was. At one point it seemed impossible. So maybe that means freeing up your schedule more so you start to have more time for the thing that you want. Maybe it's finding some educational courses, an online course, YouTube videos, about either inspiration or practical teaching towards what you're needing or wanting to bring into your life. If you are wanting to make new friends or, attract a person in your life, maybe it's a matter of deliberately joining some activities where there's people that you already have liked interests and shared interests in common with. So it's just stepping out of your normal bubble and starting to take a step towards that bigger dream. So just going back, how I knew was I had this gnawing feeling that wouldn't go away. I could have wrote that off as impossible, but I didn't. I chose to keep listening to it, even though I couldn't at that point see how it was going to happen. I just kind of took it and I put it out here and I thought, okay, let's start exploring that. Way back when, in fact, when my 25-year-old daughter when I was pregnant with her, I had a dream then of traveling around the U.S. in an RV and just raising her as an infant in an RV. Now, we didn't then have the tools, the know-how, the bandwidth, any which way to pull that off. But that feeling has always been there for me. I think with most of us, so often if we look back, there are clues. It's just different times of our life that now it's the time for that to rise up. I don't have any regrets about raising my kids the way that I have and being here and honoring their needs. Now the time is right where there's this window where we can go do this in the best possible way. I would also add a way that I knew it was time for me that I was outgrowing my current stage is when it didn't matter to me what anyone else thought about any of it. When I decided it was time to go back to school, years before I had that thought. And I was too afraid, I think, that it would look like my business was failing because I wanted to learn more. Whether that was true or not, it was just this knowing that I knew that there was something else I was supposed to add into the mix, or I could see the possibilities. I just wasn't ready to act on it yet. So I knew I was ready when I no longer cared. The same thing with travel, the same thing with homeschooling our kiddo, the same thing with moving states and switching, and so many things we all go through. When you no longer care what people think because you deeply know that it's right for you and that you're no longer thriving in that other way that you've been that's worked for you previously that just no longer does, that's a major sign. So I believe that can happen for you too. What is that feeling that comes up for you when I say that about what isn't fitting anymore? The friendships that you get off the call and you just have this gut rot feeling about, or the job that no longer is in alignment. Somebody might say, well, you need a job. Okay, but do you need that job? Is there other options? Can you start getting a resume together? Can you start getting your networking tools sharpened? Do some LinkedIn learning courses or some Coursera stuff. Upgrade your skill set. What can you do to start to manifest and attract and realistically build your skills to meet the moment? So if you have anything you would add to this, please share in the comments. I'd love to hear where you're at on this or what's worked for you. What was that feeling you've had where you knew things have got to change? For out of negative reasons, or simply this excitement bubbling up that you're like, I'm ready. I'm ready to step into this new exciting place. So let me know. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up or subscribe to the channel. This channel is new and I'm all about balancing dreams with realistic plans. And if that's your thing, I'd love to have you here and share your knowledge as well in the comments. So thanks so much. Bye.